previous session, we have talked about that is the how to bring the change in the organizational developments and the what are the different interventions are there in the change management. Now, we will talk about the certain models of the change management and that is a process how to change a theoretical framework and the life cycle theory and the teleological theory, evolutionary theories, the Levin's change model, then the phases of this plant change, Weisbord's 6-box model is there, Tichy's TPC technical, political and cultural framework, the Burke Lewin model of organizational performance and change, and as usual the case study, research papers, book recommendations and references. Now, when we are talking about the life cycle theory, so it states that an organization follows a single sequence of stages of phases which is cumulative and the characteristics acquired in earlier stages are the retained in the later stages are there. So, here it becomes very important, that is the whatever the characteristics is there in a particular the life cycle of an organization, what in the beginning of that is embryonic stage, whatever the embryonic stage, whatever has been retained, naturally those characteristics of the embryonic stage that will be reflected in the later stages also. And also the conjunctive, these stages are related with such that they are derived from a common underlying process are there, and we see that is the all these changes which are started from these embryonic stages to the growth stages and then the maturity stages and the declining stages are there, and they derive a common underlying process are there. Change is inevitable. Life cycle theory rests on the metaphor of organic growth. In other words, an organization is like a living organism. Although an organization may undergo change as it passes through its phases, perhaps in both form and function, it nevertheless maintains its identity throughout the phases are there. So, teleological theory assumes that an organization is purposeful and adaptive is there, and the according an organization develops towards a goal or some end state. As Wendy Wen and the Pool 1995 pointed out, that is the proponents of this theory view development as a repetitive sequence of the goal formulation, implementation, evaluation and modification of goals based on what was learned or intended by the entity. Establishing an organizational mission statement, creating a new vision, planning different strategy or simply listing a set of goals are all examples of the application of this school or thought. The point is this: the organizations change as goals and purpose change. The process is ongoing and interactive. In other words, the organization is never static or at a permanent equilibrium. So, it is always into the dynamic stage, because as far as the environmental changes, its status also keeps on the making the changes. Evolution theory assumes that the organization change proceeds as in biological evolution according to a continuous cycle of variation, selection and retention among organizations that competing for resources in a designated marketplace or the environment is there. Competition for the scarce environmental resources between the entities, organizations inhabiting a population, particular environment generates the evolutionary cycle. Organization change then is explained in terms of an ongoing evolving process. As in other theories, the organization is never static, there is no permanent equilibrium. It is if the organization have no choice but to change. The school of thoughts for the organizational change are the life cycle and the teleological and evolutionary theories, which we can see that is a key metaphor. Key metaphor in the life cycle theory, it is organic growth is there, because when we see that is the how this S curve organizational life cycle, where this the embryonic growth and the maturity is there, and then definitely there will be the declining stage will be there. However, this organic growth that is the in the as mentioned in the life cycle. Now, here it can be the teleological also, purposefully cooperation is there. A particular target has been achieved, and on basis of that target the organization is going for how to make this particular aspect of the these changes, whether it is the linear or it is going to be the irreversible sequences. And if it is going for the irreversible sequences, then here you will find that is going for the prescribed changes. Here this the recurrent discontinuous sequence of the goal setting is there as per the teleological is concerned, and this adaptation of the means to the reach-end state is there. However, when we are talking about this competitive this survival, then in that case we find that it is becoming a very important that is the how we are going to achieve this particular goal. So, this recurrent cumulative and the probabilistic sequence of the variation that according to the evolutionary theory, here the changes will be done while the making these continuous changes, and here it will be these making this how we are going to make these changes, and these changes which are going on according to the evolutionary stages, these will becoming the recurrent, cumulative and the probabilistic are there. Because here these sequences which will be starting and with the period of time with the evolutions that is going to be the cumulative is there, and when it is becoming the cumulative then definitely the probabilistic sequence of the variation, selection and the retention will be there. Here we have to understand every organization will have a capacity of its retention, and on the basis of the resources that the organization will decide about the selection process is also there. Now, ultimately in all these three theories, what a common we find, that is the event progression. So, event progression is there, whether it is a linear or prescribed changes are there as per the life cycle theory, or as per the teleological theory it is going to the adaptation of means to reach a particular state, or it is evolutionary, that is going to be the selection and the retention is there. The very popular model for the changes, that is the Lewin's change model is there, and Lewin has mentioned that is the first and foremost is the unfreezing to become the motivated to change. So, here when we are talking about the step 1, that is about the unchanging is there, then the restructuring is there, and there is a refreezing is there. Now, here this unfreezing, how to do the unfreezing? The awareness. You create the awareness about these unfreezing, and therefore, that is why change is required. So, like in many industries, the CEOs before bringing the change, they address to the stakeholders and tell them that is because it is these changes are occurring, and therefore we are also have to changes, maybe the technological changes are there or because of the competition. If the competition is becoming very tough, and then when you do your SWOT analysis, you find that is the yes, we have to change the organization structure. So, therefore, before immediately changing the organization structures, you decide that is let us communicate to the stakeholders and let them understand there is a need of the change of organization structure, and because as soon as you will change the organization structure, and the power and positions that will be disturbed. So, therefore, you first if you give the mindset or their information to them, then they will be mentally prepared. Then the cognitive restructuring is there, what needs to be changed. Now, it is not that only that we communicate to the what the change, there is a need of change, but exactly what change is required, and the refreezing is to make the change permanent is there, and whatever changes you make, maybe the social, political, economical, legal or the technological, and those changes that you will making, the refreezing will be done, and you make the changes permanent. But this refreezing again, it will be depending upon your internal and external environmental factors, and then again you may require to go for the unfreezing, cognitive and the refreezing is there. So, it is a continuous process, because with the period of time the things are going to be the change. At the outside things are going to be changed, the inside organization has to be also changed. I will give certain examples. So, recognize the need for the change is there, in the unfreezing is there. So, you have to talk to in the changes into the automobile industry, change into the steel industries, and therefore, in that case there was a huge competition and it was required to make the changes. What needs to change? Change is required to, that is changes into organization structure, changes into the technology, changes into the any economic rules and regulation of policy matter. Ensure there is a strong support from management is there. Now, change is always resisted, right, because nobody likes the change, but the change is unavoidable. So, therefore, in that case to make this change it will be uncomfortable stage, and to make them comfortable, the organization's full support is required. Simple example is the shifting of the technology, shifting of the role of the production process, then the person who is working on that, he will be under very much tension, and the whole organization will be under the pressure, that is these changes are to be brought successfully. So, therefore, that is a strong support from management is very much necessary. If strong support of management is there, everything will be done. Manage and understand the doubts and the concerns are there. So, here we will talking about that is the how we will manage and understand these doubts and concerns are there. The change is the plan the changes, implement the changes, what changes you are planning, what changes you are making, and help employees to learn new concept or the points of the view is there. Now, the refreeze is there. So, changes are reinforced and stabilized, integrate the changes into the normal way of doing the things and develop ways to sustain the changes there, and this is giving you that is the celebrate what changes are required. So, therefore, in that case the change once you are making this unfreeze of the change, managing understanding the doubts and concerns of the people, talking to them, having the meetings with them, then you are supposed to make that is what the plan you have to plan your change. That is what change you are willing to make, and the implement the changes are there, and accordingly whatever the changes you plan maybe in the technology or the people or process, then you implement that particular change. Help employees to learn new concepts or points of view. Now you are making the introduction of new technology. So, let the people understand, let the people try, and now you are changing the organization structure. So, therefore, new roles, responsibilities and power is there, and therefore, the person will be under the tough situation. So, therefore, let him understand and to know that what are the problems are there. Once you know, you have made the changes, people started working on that, but that is not the end. What you have to do? You have to do the refreeze. Changes are reinforced and stabilized are there in the refreezing, integrates the changes into the normal way of doing the things are there, and as a result of which you develop the ways to sustain the change and to celebrate the changes success is there. So, I would like to give one example. For example, like the modernization or the technical operations of the library is there. Earlier it was the manual, now it is the technical operations are there. Now, first you talk to the librarian and tell them that is the there is a need for now convert this the paperless library, because the everything is available on the desktop, and people want to learn from their desktop only. So, therefore, in that case you are introducing a culture of the paperless organization, and then you are implementing the ERP. In the previous session I have talked about the ERP processes there. What is required? You have to help the people how to work under this particular system, because the unless and until they will not learn this particular change, they will not able to deliver, and if they are not delivering, it will be becoming a failure. So, to refreeze, changes are reinforced and stabilized, integrate the changes into normal way of doing things, and develop the ways to sustain the change, and celebrate the success is there, and this is becoming the refreezing of this organizational process. Now, changes can be planned change, changes can be the unplanned change. Let us talk about the planned change. So, a planned change in the 3 steps includes the 5 phases, there is these refreezing, freezing and unfreezing includes the 5 phases. Development of a need for change, that is the unfreezing is there. Establishment of a change relationship between the change agent and the client organization is there. So, therefore, it becomes very important, that is the client organization and the change agent that they understand what is the need is there. Working towards change, that is a change are started, generalization and stabilization of change, and achieving a termination in the relationship, that is ending the change contract between the consultant change agent and the client organization is there. Now, here one thing which is you have to keep in mind, that is the whenever you are making this type of these the unfreezing, moving and refreezing is there. Now, make sure that is this is it is going through a very scientific method. So, therefore, the change contract that should not have any lapses. If the change contract is given in any lapses, then your change will not be successful. The another model which is the Leavitt's organization system model talks about the task, structure, people and technology. So, I was talking about the people, process and technology, and it is also talking about the structure also. So, here it shows that is the whenever we are going for this particular model, then here the task, the organization's purpose, that is to be explained, to provide a service to manufacture a product, the people, those who carry out the task, and the technology, that is the tools, computers, etc. And this will also change the structure, workflow, decision making, authority, communication, etc. So, all interacted with one another and were interdependent. Second, Leavitt point out that there is a change in any one of the components would result in the change among the other three also. So, it is a cumulative effect. So, if you are making the change into the people, definitely it will affect the process and technology. If you are making the change into the process, it will be affect the people and technology, or into the technology, then people and process. So, vice versa. So, therefore, in that case this is becoming very important, that is the components which you are using, they are making these changes and they interpreted it. Now, the outside environment is there and there is a purpose, what business are we in, and the structure is there, how do we decide of the work, are there any the incentives, rewards for doing the all that needs a change, and the helpful mechanisms have which educate coordination technology, and how do manage conflict. So, therefore, leadership is someone he is keeping the boxes in balance. So, here it is the first and foremost is about the changes, and that is about the what is the purpose of the change. You are making the change just for sake of change, or you are there is definitely there is a purpose, and then what structure that is you would like to bring, and naturally if you are bringing all these points very successfully, there will be the rewards are also there. Sometimes this successful change that will bring helpful mechanisms, that will need the helpful mechanisms. So, how we adequate coordinating the technologies, that is to be talked, and relationship is there, how do we manage this particular change. So, the Weisbord's primary question for each box is as the purpose, how clear are organizational members about the organization's purpose and mission, how supportive and there of the organization's purpose and mission is there. Structural changes are there. So, therefore, how adequate is a fit between the organization's purpose and mission and the internal structure that is designed to serve particular purpose, because many times it has been seen that is the organization's internal structure is not matching with what change is required, and then in that case the change will be failure. The rewards, what are the similarities and dissimilarities between the organizations formally rewards and punishes, and what organization members actually believe they are rewarded or punished for both. The Nadler-Tushman congruence model for diagnostic organization behavior, it talks about the input, process and output. So, input is the environmental resource history is there, and there as per the strategy there will be the transformation process, which will be including the task, information organization, formal organizational engagement and individual. So, these are the transformation process and the feedback they have adopted this particular model, and the output will be organizational group individuals. So, therefore, in that case these formal organizational arrangements which are made from the informal organization, the formal organizations, and then the organizational group individuals. So, therefore, here these input which you are going to be giving the output, that becomes very important. Now, the where is the cost saving now, and where is the creativity? The cost saving and creativity is a transformational process, that is what type of the processes you are having, and then in that case when you are having this particular aspect of this transformational saving, then you have to understand that is the what you are going to attend. So, here we will see that is these organizational, formal organizational changes, they are becoming a very important and leading to the organizations, the group individuals are there. So, what is the input? So, input to the system is relatively fixed, and the 4 they cited on the environment, the resource available to the organization history, and the strategies that are developed and they evolve over the time. These inputs help define how people in the organization behave, and they serve as a constraints on behavior as well as the opportunities for the actions are concerned. And the outputs will be 4 key categories of output: system functioning, group behavior, intergroup relations and individual behavior, and the effect will be there. the transformation process, that is becoming very, very important, and these compose transformation process changing into the input into the output. The task component consists of the jobs to be done and the inherent characteristics of the work itself. The primary task dimensions are the extent and nature of the required interdependence between and among the task performers, the level of skill needed and the kinds of the information required to perform the task adequately. The individual component consists of all the differences and the similarities among employees, particularly demographic data, skill and professional levels and personality attitudinal variables. These organizational arrangements include the managerial and the operational structure of the organization, workflow and design, the reward system, management information systems and the like. These arrangements are the formal mechanisms used by the management to correct and control behavior and to organize and accomplish the work which is to be done. So, the fourth one is that the informal organizational is the social structure within the organization and including the grapevine, the organization's internal politics and the informal authority information structure, whom you see and for what. So, therefore, in that case you will find that it will be the transformational process. Now, the Tichy's TPC technical political cultural framework is there. So, 9 changes in the 1983. This Tichy's model focuses much more explicitly on organizational change. So, 9 changes or levers are there. External interference on the organizations in your external environment. As soon as you will go to the this particular project, you will find that is the organization shows the concern, and therefore, the external environment that will create as an input. Then there will be the mission, that is the why we are making these changes, and the strategy, that is the in the model liberty considered them as a distinct levels. Managing organizational mission and strategy processes. So, therefore, in that case strategy processes and the mission processes that will be followed. The task change often requires the new tasks are there. So, tasks are to be confirmed. Prescribed networks, formal organizational structure is there, and that will become the prescribed network. Organizational processes are the communicating and problem solving, which is result into the people and emergent network is there. More or less the informal organizations are there. So, these all 9 changes, whether the external interference of the organizations, external environment, mission, strategy, managing organizational mission, strategy, process, task, prescribed network, organizational processes, people and the emergent network, all this will be covering the technical, political and cultural framework in the change is concerned. So, this prescribed work, the network that will giving you the input, environmental history, resources, mission strategies, tasks, people and emergent network, organizational processes will be there by the organization. The Burke Litwin model of organizational performance and change, it is talk about the mission and strategy. So, this is the mission and strategy, the structure which is giving you the task requirement and the individual skill abilities. This mission and strategy comes from the external environmental factors that you understand, and from there that you start talking about the leadership, that is the how the leaders are ready for the making these particular changes. Then the management practices are there, that is what are the different practices of the management will be there. Work unit climate is there, that is a culture which you are creating, and that is about the work unit climate will be there. Motivation is there, and the individual and organizational performance that is giving the external environmental changes. Now, on basis of this, the output will be organization culture, system, policies and the procedures, and individual needs and values are there. So, therefore, this is giving you the Burke Litwin model of organization performance, where you are making the change into the organization culture, or maybe the systems of these the policies and procedures, or the individual needs and values are there. So, transformational factors which are very, very important is external environment and then the leader and the leader's mission and strategy, the leadership position, organization culture and the individual and organizational performance, that will be very, very important. Organizational performance and change that will be structure, task, requirements and the individual skill abilities are there. So, that will giving you these structures, and these management process which will be giving you the work unit climate. So, you have to understand what is the climate of the organization. Then the motivation of the willingness of the employees to make the changes, individual and organizational performance, that becomes the key criteria. Now, these systems, policies and procedures and the individuals, this will be giving you therefore the achievement for here is, that is about the values which you create. After discussing these models, now I would like to talk about the case study, and that is the Hewlett Packard HP case study is there. So, Mark had began the hearing complaints about the corporate sales functions within the weeks of the taking over the Hewlett Packard. Some corporate customers were telling him the company had so many confusing management layers that they never knew who to call. Others were saying that they frequently got different prices quotes from the salesperson in the different regions. Inside the company, people were complaining that they were so overwhelmed with the administrative tasks that they had little time to spend serving customers, and a hard to quick action is there. So, after digging into HP sales structure, he discovered that there were 11 layers of management between him and the customer. In addition, there were too many people assigned to support staff and management roles and too many assigned to work directly with the customers, particularly corporate clients, that is work is provided and 70% of the companies are there, employees are there. So, had restructured the workers among the HPs and PCs printing and corporate technology groups. So, the salespeople could master the products they were selling. They fired hundreds of the underperformance and cut 3 layers of the sales management with the top corporate clients, had assigned just one salesperson, so that they could always know whom to contact. The restructuring also included changing the reward system for salespeople, trying commissions to revenue, and the profitability is there. Her made a number of other management changes at HP, including the downsizing the overall workforce and giving divisions direct control over about the 70% of their budget cost. Recent years have been thought for the computer makers, especially with the corporations decreasing their spending. However, the HP has made some impressive giants, significantly increasing its share of both computers and the corporate computer sales are there. I am sure that you will be able to answer these questions on this particular case study. What are the different types of the strategic changes that make the HUD carried out at the HP, and what could be the possible long term implications of the change that were made at the HP, and what possible alternatives could be adopted to resolve the issues at the HP is there. This is the research paper which talks about management of change in a multinational company is there, and the purpose of this paper is to comment on models of change management, overcoming resistance to change, the necessary skills and commitment to implement change and strategies in the planning. It concludes with the key outcomes of the simulation exercise. Now, here you will find that is the paper is based on a management of change where it identifies that is to bring the successful change at all levels. Your communication is playing a very important, overcoming resistance still required, and the planning strategies to implement is there. This is the book. This book is the Organization Change Theory and Practices by the Warner and Burke, and this will be talking about that is the change is constant in today's organization, as we are discussing from the beginning. The managers and employees at all levels must understand both how to implement planned changes and effectively handle the unexpected change. The 5th edition of the Organization Change Theory and Practice provides an eye-opening exploration into the nature of change by presenting the latest evidence based research to discuss a range of theories, models, and perspectives on organizational change. Best-selling author Mr. Warner Burke skillfully connects theory to practice with modern cases of effective and ineffective organization change. Recent examples of transformational leadership and the planned and revolutionary change and best practices to successfully influence to change. The fully updated and edition also includes a new chapter on healthcare and government, which will be helping you to giving you the support for learning these particular aspects also. These are the references. You can go through these references and can find out that is the how like this Dobbs book is also there, Organization Theory and Design, which you can also refer this theory book also, and then you will find that is the by going through the details of these references, you are able to develop in detailing about that is the what are the different change management models are there and how to effectively bring the changes into organization, and the one of the changes that is a change into the organization structure here, and when you are making these changes into the power and the relationship amongst the employee, how you can handle this given new situation, that we will discuss further, and this will give you the insight, the different models of the change management. Thank you.